Welcome to my channel and welcome to the video where I will talk about books where it's possible to use watercolors and where I used to color but books which I hadn't touched during this whole year. And maybe this video will be a good reminder for myself that somewhere in previous life I was quite adventurous to do pictures with watercolors, not only with pencils, and maybe I need to return to that state of mind. We will start from books by Ravin Filan. I have two of them. I prefer a little bit more book with dragons, both because I love subject more and I think that line art is better. But let's start from Spirit Animal. Here line art was transformed from full color art by Ravin Filan, and sometimes pictures with animals, they could be a little bit confusing. But book has great quality. It's by my favorite publishing company Blue Angel, the same who created books by Jasmine and Beckett Griffiths. So paper is great, but it's not very easy to color. And I also promised myself that in this book I will use only watercolors or water-soluble pencils without regular pencil. And I think that maybe it was too much. I put slightly big pressure to myself, and pictures which I did here, well, they are not bad, but when I continue to look at them, I think that but with pencils, with regular pencils, you could do such a better work on these pictures. So maybe I need to change my resolution and maybe to start using both medium, watercolor for the background, for the first layer, and then pencils. But let's have a look at the pictures which I have here. So I have this lizard wizard, and it's one of my favorites in this book. Here I used watercolors for the background. There were excessive amount of black lines for those stones, but I think that with dark granulating watercolors I managed to mask them so. Apart from various gray colors, I also added a little bit of violet blue and a little bit of gold to support a little bit main colors for the lizard body. And I did this magical stone with runa. If you have lizard wizard, we need some magical touch to the picture. A lizard itself I did with Inktense pencils completely, and there are no regular pencils here. Well, it's not bad, but as I said, I simply start to imagine that maybe with regular pencils I would do better texture, better contrasts, but it was very educative, of course, so maybe it's a good practice. Maybe I need to return to it. Pictures, as I said, they are not easy to color. For example, let me show you something. Here we have empty backgrounds. We have slightly confusing textures on body of the animal. Yes, on original painting, which was made with acrylic paint, it was very creative by Ravin Filan to add planets to the cat's body, but I don't know how to do it here. And again, maybe a little bit too much of those background lines. They are not easy to interpret what we have here. Maybe other kind of branches. So apart from resolving how to do such textures on the body, on the bark, how to do it with watercolor, you also need to do something with the background. So I wouldn't call this book as a book for beginners, but pictures which I did here, they indeed taught me a lot. This one I again did in the period where I added a lot of pearl and metal colors everywhere, but if you have Raven Magic, I decided that maybe it's justifying. And it was first layer of matte, regular watercolor, and then I sprinkled metal and pearl paint everywhere to define feathers on the raven, to do this magical runa circle behind the body, and on the background also everything is very shiny. Maybe it looks childish, but in the process you really have a lot of fun when you work with such shiny paints. Here again it wasn't bad. On the water again there were excessive lines which I don't think that we need when we do watercolor. I tried to cover them with darker shades of watercolor, and yeah, at least they were printed with very delicate lines, so it's not so bad. So water is okay, but on the body of turtle I do love how I did the central part and those paws. Sorry, I don't know how to call the front hands of turtle. But what is slightly discouraging its head. I didn't like it a lot in line art, and now I think that head looks a little bit childish, but the rest looks not bad. Anyway, I remember that I put everything, all my limited skills with watercolor into this book, so each page here it's a product of huge work, even if result looks very average. Many pictures are lovely. I think that when I start to color here again, maybe I will select one of the pictures with such goddesses or spirits, because they are really the best subject for me in ravine fill art. Her full color art is amazing. Her coloring books are also great, but not easy to color. Another one which suffered profusely from my love to golden watercolor. I wanted to do an autumn picture. Well, there were a lot of leaves here, so I simply covered them by various shades of orange red colors, and it's not bad. Oh, I think that actually here I did pencils, feathers with pencils. Anyway, these videos, they are on my YouTube channel. I will leave you a link, and it will also be fun for myself to rewatch how I did this. And again, a lot of golden paint. Many pictures are so lovely, but for me it would be much easier to do this one with pencils. So, and that's another angel spirit which I really want to color. It's called Face. And finally I have this bear. It's bear from cover. I wanted to keep the bright blue color for the eyes. Here I definitely hadn't touched it with pencils. Everything was made with watercolors. The most confusing part was this bottom one, which we don't have on the cover, but somehow I managed to color it. Oh well, in such moments you feel how limited are your watercolor skills in layering, in mixing colors, so sometimes it's nice, but you definitely, when you compare your pencils work and your watercolor work, you can see the huge difference in skills. It's not bad, but you just don't have to think that you messed up beautiful picture. If you used pencils, it would look much more professional. But on the other side, you gain some experience. So let's move to the second book, which I personally love more, but where I have only one finished picture, and it's definitely a book from my list of shame. Books which I consider as one of the most beautiful, most interesting, but where I never have time to color. I even have several bookmarks for the projects which I want to start, but still I have just one pretty dragon here who is guarding his sapphires. Again, background, it's a mix of regular and metal watercolors, but at least here I didn't exaggerate, so it's only a little bit of metal blue here and a little bit of silver for those feathers on the background. Maybe indeed it's the best way to use watercolors and pencils. At least I think that here it created the right contrast between background and the dragon. Now maybe I would make slightly stronger contrasts. But even now I think that dragon and especially sapphires, they look very lovely. Another book where paper is good and where you can use a watercolor at least for part of the picture, it's this Lady Spring, where we have works by several artists, so Polish artists probably. And the only picture I did so far, it's this Japanese plum. It's by Anna Marcinska, I believe, yes, by Anna Marcinska. Her art style is very easy to recognize. Her girls, they have very delicate face, line art is amazing, and they all have very light sketch style. I love Anna Marcinska, so it's another reminder for myself that I need to start doing works here and in her other books, because her line art books, they are amazing, very inspiring. So here I used watercolors for the background, apart from big flowers. For big flowers and for the lady's kimono, I used Starjoy pencils, which I received at that moment, a Starjoy Classic Edition, older pencils, and they were okay here, but on this paper all pencils work really well. And watercolor also works good on this paper. You can add water, you can do washes, you can do glazing, so paper is good for mixed media technique. And I hope that during the spring of the next year I will do more pictures here. I even almost selected which one will be the next, the beauty with nest on her head, but I also want to do something from Christina Novak, I believe, so her, yeah, Christina Novak, with her ladies with flowers. They are also quite beautiful and not so difficult to color. Anyway, it's another book where I hadn't colored frequently, but which has great quality. Another abundant pile of books, it's those books by Jade Gideon. I have Thailand Escape, I have Carnival Escape and Island Escape. I think that they are almost unique, because there are not so many books on our coloring market which were printed on real textured watercolor paper. That's why they are so thick and heavy watercolor paper, and they also have some double spreads. They could be a little bit unusual to color, because some of the pictures you need to maybe know the history of the country to recognize, to understand what is depicted here. So many of them look a little bit empty, and you need to include your own imagination to finish them. Well, let me try to find what I have already colored. Again, when I color here, I start to feel how limited are my watercolor skills. Even if I do love pictures which I finished here, they look, I don't know, flat, dirty, with dull colors, even if I use professional grade of watercolors. So that's probably why I stopped to color here, that my disappointment from the result, it was maybe bigger than my pleasure in process. I know that without trying to understand what you don't like and what you can change, maybe to learn better from some YouTube video or books, but when you look at these pictures, you think, oh my god, it's like 3 years old work. You look at your pencil work and you see that it's much better, so you obviously return to your pencils. The next book is Silent Escape, and it's probably my favorite among the three. So here I try to do a couple of landscapes. Again, they are not very accurately colored. I especially dislike how I didn't color very accurately around the leaves. But it was interesting to mix by myself color for the stones. I tried to show that temples are slightly highlighted by one side. Maybe the sun starts to rise. Maybe it's evening, so it starts to go down, but I tried to show that source of light is somewhere on the left, and it's visible here. Yes, shadows, they aren't very deep. I tried to blend various green colors for the leaves to make them at least slightly different. So there are better and worse parts of it, but at least it's more or less decent. I wasn't disappointed when I finished it. Another one where I do love how I did this stone statue of Buddha, but leaves, they look very plain and simple. At least I decided to add color to a couple of them. I also didn't know how to do more interesting sky. Well, I am quite a coward when I color with watercolors. Another one where I loved how I did this bird, pheasant probably, but it's a symbol bird of the island. It was quite interesting to read about it. Bird is indeed very colorful. And then I did this simple pattern background, everything with watercolor, but my main error was when I added shadow behind the body of the bird. It doesn't look like shadow on the wall. It looks like my paint started to bleed out of borders. And yeah, it was disappointing to mess up with the page on the last step. Next one is this another animal. Sorry, I don't know how to buffalo bill, how to call it properly. Here I decided to try to do something more colorful for the leaves, and here even on the body I love how I did shadows. Upper part is more highlighted. I think that sun is high, so top part of the body is more highlighted. On the sides shadows are deeper. I do love how I did legs, but mostly I struggled with this shadow beneath the legs. I washed it away several times, and in the end I decided that, well, it's acceptable. I don't want to damage paper, so I leave it. Well, nothing special, but I remember that even such simple work required from me a lot of efforts. And finally I have this carnival escape, also quite interesting, and first it was a little bit confusing, many pictures, but then when I posted on Instagram my first picture colored, Jade Gideon left very kind comment, and she explained that she was inspired for this book by real carnivals, which are very important for the culture of Ireland. So she asked me to Google the name of the carnival main art director, artist, and and in such way I found a lot of those characters, those costumes from previous years. So it started to much easier to color, to understand this book. It really was very sweet and very touching. Here we have this short story. If you are better in English than myself, you can read it. But indeed it was very interesting to learn how the culture of carnival it was important for Trinidad Island. That's probably my best work in all books by Jade Gideon. I deliberately decided to make this dramatic background with visible brush strokes to make it something between paint and blood, so it has this dramatic effect. And I did this carnival mask, everything with only paints. There are no touch of pencils apart from small shading, I think, in the center of her eyes, or maybe even not. I'm especially proud how I did her hair, this texture which I did with tiny brush, and at least I managed to add nice and deep shadows for flowers. They don't look flat, but my biggest proud moment was when I finished all those gemstones, her jewelry. So that's one of the works where I'm still extremely proud of myself. I don't know how I managed to do it. Another carnival work, it was this one. Here I added also a lot of shiny paints for the papers, for her costume, but I spectacularly messed up with her nose. I hope that it's not very visible until I show you it. I even managed to do a couple of spreads here, and again I don't know how I decided, how I managed to start such works. Well, here of course I didn't have any previous experience how to blend watercolor for skin tone from the main palette. I tried to add a little bit more of brown color to make their skin slightly more tanner. It was fun to select colors. I wanted them to be very colorful. They all are so smiley. I really love their faces. But I love them, but I totally dislike how I did lips. For me, green lips, it's probably the most complicated subject in watercoloring. I saw a lot of tutorials, but somehow I don't know how to blend normal greens and how to add normal shadows. My greens, they are awful. They are simply boring. I would love to add other colors, but when I start to add other colors, they start to look dirty. And of course, shadows on the walls, they all are quite simple and definitely not deep enough. But at least I love ladies. And the second one, where I used together watercolors and Derwent ink tents, it's another part of carnival procession. Those huge unicorns, those elephants, those huge figures. I tried to do main characters with more vibrant colors and everything which is on the background with lighter, more transparent pastel colors. Something worked well, something was not so easy to color and it started again to look dirty, but it's not bad, and I applaud myself how courageous I was to start such projects. Now I am much more lazy. And finally, in this video, I decided to include my very old Chapet books, which also were quite popular several years ago. I saw them in one of YouTube reviews and I immediately wanted them. I got them from Book Depository, and first I was confused by paper quality and by excessive black paint on the pictures. But then I started to color them step by step, and I still think that even they are quite old already, they are not bad, and many works here, they are interesting to look at, and I have many pleasant memories when I look at them. First I was disappointed that this off-white, almost creamy paper, it make all watercolors to look a little bit dull, to lose intensity, vibrance of color. But later I started to appreciate it because everything here looks like old vintage postcards, posters, because of this dull, not very vibrant colors. Strange quality of the paper. Here it was easier for me somehow to color, maybe because shadows were more defined, maybe because subject of this interior, this rooms of inside of the shops, it's easier for me to color comparing to landscapes. Landscapes are extremely difficult for me to do with watercolors. Here inside of the shop, where I need to color metal, maybe china, maybe other tableware, glass, wood, those edible things, it's easier to do with watercolors. So usually I did like 30% with watercolors, and then for the remaining 40% I used Kuchener Mondeluz. They were quite well on this paper, and they helped to add shadows where I needed them, or to color tiniest details. I love the look of these old shops, cafe, which we have here, and of course it's quite fun to color all the sweets. Well, maybe they are a little bit similar to one another, but from time to time it was nice to color. I don't remember actually when was the last time when I touched this book. I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Very long period already. Many pictures here are still very lovely. I know that now I wouldn't do better work, so at least I taught myself how to blend various shades of milk or dark chocolate. It was interesting how to blend colors for steel, for gold. Some of the pictures are extremely messy from the beginning, so some of them are more easy to color, not so frightening. Yes, in the beginning I was disappointed that when I start to add darker colors, shadows, and even when I use transparent light colors, everything after drying on this paper looks not very bright and starts to look like, indeed, like old poster. But now I started to appreciate this look. It really matched the style of the line art and style of the subjects. Nothing is new. Here it was interesting to practice how to color glass jars when part of the candies we can see clearly and part through the jar. I used more intense color here inside of the open part, and less intense colors, and then a lot of paint to make highlights on the glass. You can see that I did quite a lot of works here. When I just got it, it was probably only one or two books where I indeed could use watercolors or water-soluble pencils. That's why I used it very frequently. I especially love those shelves with various baked goods, cakes, sweets, chocolate things, and of course lollipops. A little bit crazy, but I remember that I did it for one of the winter seasons when I didn't have enough of Christmas pages, so I decided that it actually could be a page from Christmas market, so why don't I color it? The same with this X. It was the only page which I had for Easter season. It's lovely to look back at the time when I had a very small book collection and when I was more adventurous with my art supply choices. Art supplies also were much more limited, so I experimented more. And that's where I started to do page something I didn't like, maybe the shelf behind, or how I started to do this old cashier machine, so I abandoned it. It was the last project which I tried to do here. I don't remember what I didn't like. Shadows on them, or maybe style of these cookies, which I didn't like and I didn't know how to improve them. So something discouraged me from finish this one, and I abandoned the whole book. That's the last one here. And let's have a quick look at its sister. It's Curiosity Chappé sister book. Here I have lesser amount of finished pictures, but still couple of interesting works. Here I have this very dark picture with various armor. Here I used bigger amount of pencils. Previous one it's almost completely watercolors. Here for the armor it's pencils, but I still used a lot of Kohinoor Mondeluz. It was really a good way to use them. I love them, but not on each paper and not in every book. But as addition for the watercolor background, to work on details or to work on shadows, highlights, they are really nice. They are vibrant and soft. So Mondeluz are definitely a good medium if paper allows you to use them. And I think that, yeah, that's the last one probably in this book. Not many, but I love all of them. They are interesting. Well, if I proceed to color, I think that it will be in Curiosity Chappé. Even if now I am much more frightened by this amount of black, especially black for shading, still many pictures are really lovely, and now I have desire to return to these books. Look at this lovely one. Let's hope that during the next year I will do something here, because I don't like to abandon my books, which I still like, where I do love art, simply because I have newer books, recently arrived and maybe more popular now. So sometimes it's good to look back at your collection and to use some of your older stash of books. Thank you, and I think that I will try to find more books for the next video, even if I already managed to show you the biggest part of it. Thank you, and I will see you very soon.